You may be in a season right now where it feels like you've been walked over, misunderstood, betrayed, or even deeply wounded by someone who only thought of themselves. They used your kindness, manipulated your love, and left you with broken pieces while they kept walking like nothing happened. You gave them loyalty. They gave you lies. You offered peace. They stirred up chaos. And now you're asking, where is John? In all of this, I want to tell you today, God saw every tear, every sleepless night, every time you had to stay quiet to keep the peace. He's not ignoring it. He's not turning a blind eye. And here's the truth, when you're mistreated, especially by someone who exalts themselves, God steps in as your defender. You don't have to fight back. You don't have to plot or prove anything. God knows exactly what to do, and He's never late. There comes a time in life when it feels like certain people have an upper hand, not because they're more righteous, more talented, or more deserving, but because they've manipulated their way into power. They wear charm like a mask, confidence like armor, and pride like a crown. And sometimes those very people cross into your life with selfish motives, using your goodness for their own gain. It can feel like they're winning, like they're rising higher while you're the one left to pick up the pieces they shattered. But here's what you must understand. Appearances are not always reality. Just because someone looks like they're untouchable doesn't mean they're blessed. Just because someone is sitting high today doesn't mean they won't be brought low tomorrow. God allows certain things to play out, not because He's forgotten about you, but because He's setting something greater in motion. When someone full of pride wounds you, belittles you, manipulates you, and walks away without apology, it can feel like justice will never come. But what you don't see is what's happening behind the scenes. What you don't see is how God is already beginning to move in ways that no human can stop. He's not just your protector, He's also your vindicator. You don't have to get even. You don't have to tarnish your spirit by becoming like them. All you have to do is stay close to God and trust that the one who sees all things is also the one who makes all things right. There's a danger in arrogance that most people overlook. Those who think they can hurt others and walk away clean are the ones who are setting themselves up for a fall. That's the trap of pride. It blinds you to consequences. It makes you believe you're above correction. And that illusion is dangerous, not only to those around them, but to themselves. But God is never mocked. He is patient, yes. He is merciful, absolutely. But He is also just. He doesn't allow pride to reign forever. He doesn't allow cruelty to prosper indefinitely. Folk, when the illusion begins to crack, when the spotlight fades, and the truth begins to surface. Sometimes God allows these individuals to build high towers so that their fall will be seen by all. Because it's not just about defending you, it's also about revealing who they truly are. They built their image on lies, on deception, on charm without character. And eventually, that foundation crumbles, and when it does, people begin to see them differently. Opportunities dry up. Connections fade. Confidence turns into confusion. And they begin to experience what they once made you feel. Rejection. Revenge, but because God has a way of allowing people to reap what they sow. And while they were building that false image, you were healing. While they were boasting in their own strength, you were surrendering to God's. While they were climbing over others, you were going low in humility. And in God's timing, He raises those who trust in Him. Your job is not to get bitter. Your job is not to wish for their destruction. Your job is to keep your heart clean so that when the tables turn, they always do, you'll be ready to receive what God has been preparing for you all along. That's how God works. He exposes pride not just to tear it down, but to lift up truth. The people who once looked invincible, who used their influence to hurt and manipulate, will be brought face to face with the reality that God doesn't play faith. And when He acts, He doesn't need to shout, doesn't need to argue, doesn't need to prove. He simply moves. And when He moves, no one can stop Him. The same God who gave Pharaoh a chance to repent, who eventually let him be swallowed by the sea. The same God who allowed Saul to rule Israel for a season was the same God who raised up David in his place. When people abuse their position, when they use their voice to tear down, when they think no one sees the way they act behind closed doors, God sees it all. And in due time, He always responds. You are not forgotten. You are not weak for walking away from drama. No. You are not foolish for choosing peace over payback. You are walking in wisdom because what they thought they got away with is already on God's calendar for correction. What they thought was hidden is already exposed in heaven. And what they thought would hurt you forever is only setting the stage for your next blessing. So let them play the game. Let them talk. Let them pretend. Let them rise if they must. You just stay faithful. Because while they are building on sand, you are building on the rock. And when the winds come and the storms hit, what's full or what's real will remain. That is how God takes revenge. Not with your hands, not through your anger, through His perfect justice, in His perfect time. And when it happens, you won't have to say a word. Everyone will already know. God fought for you, God defended you, and God removed the illusion they hid behind. Sometimes the greatest revenge is not destruction, it's elevation. When someone sets out to harm, especially those who carry a narcissistic spirit, they often lay traps in secret, hoping you'll fall. They gossip to destroy your reputation. They twist the truth to make themselves look like the victim. They use kindness as a weakness, interpreting your humility. What they don't realize is when you're walking with God, you don't need to fight for position, power, or platform. God, He's your promoter, and He knows how to lift you in a way that no one can take credit for, not even you. When the enemy uses people to try and humiliate or hinder you, it's never just about the moment. It's a test set up. It's a divine opportunity for God to demonstrate His faithfulness in your life. The narcissist thinks they're the master of the game, that they're pulling strings, orchestrating moves, controlling outcomes. But while they're focused on manipulation, God is quietly preparing your promotion. The very thing they thought would discredit you is what God uses to qualify you. The very season of silence and suffering they tried to trap you in becomes the launching pad for your influence, your growth, your expansion. God has a way of flipping the script in such a powerful and undeniable way. And here's what's so amazing. He doesn't have to bring you up by tearing them. He lets them walk into the very trap they set. You don't have to hope for their downfall. You don't even have to keep up with their actions, because the trap they set in darkness is being used by God to teach them a lesson in the light. You can't sow betrayal and expect loyalty. You can't plant lies and expect truth. You can't destroy others and expect peace in your own soul. And while they're dealing with the weight of their own actions, God is raising you. Not with fanfare, not with noise, but in a quiet, steady, undeniable way. He's increasing your influence, enlarging your territory, and giving you peace in the very areas they tried to torment. He doesn't need to announce what He's doing. His blessings speak for themselves. His favor becomes a banner over your life. A testimony that says, someone I defended. This is someone I raised. There are stories throughout Scripture where the enemy dug pits for the righteous, only to fall into them themselves. Haman built gallows for Mordecai, thinking he'd celebrate the day of his downfall. But God turned the whole situation around. Haman fell on the very structure he built. Mordecai was honored publicly by the very king Haman tried to manipulate. What? Because God will always honor those who keep their heart pure, even in painful situations. The narcissist might think they're winning in the short term, but long term, it's righteousness. God doesn't just protect you, He promotes you in the presence of those who opposed you. He prepares a table, not in private, but in full view of those who doubted, disrespected, and tried to destroy you. That's not to embarrass anyone, but to make it clear that your elevation didn't come from man. It came from Him. You didn't need manipulation to get there. You didn't step on others to rise. You simply trusted the process, held your peace, and stayed faithful, and God honored that. There's something powerful about letting go and letting God handle it. The narcissist wants you to fight. They want to see you lose control. They feed off your reaction because it confirms their false sense of superiority. But when you refuse to engage, when you rise above it, when you bless instead of curse, you disarm their agenda. You confuse them. You confuse them. And while they're distracted trying to figure out why you haven't fallen, God is steadily lifting you higher. Not because you're perfect, but because you trusted Him when it was hard. And here's the best part. When God lifts you, He sustains you. It's not a fragile success based on performance or pleasing people. It's rooted in grace. It's built on integrity. And no one, not even the one who tried to break you, can pull it down. The trap they designed becomes their teacher. The pit they dug becomes their mirror. And your life becomes the evidence that God takes care of His own. So don't worry about who's plotting. Don't stress over who's talking behind your back. Don't lose sleep over what they said, what they did, or what they think they got away with. Trust the one who sees all things, knows all hearts, and never lets injustice win forever. The narcissist may rise quickly, but they fall just as fast. You may have cried for a season, but joy is on its way. God is lifting you, protecting you, and proving that the trap set for you can never prosper when you're covered by His hand. It's hard to understand in the moment, but some of the worst things that happen to you are actually working for your good. Yeah. Especially when you've been wounded by someone who only cared about their own image, their own power, and their own desires. A narcissist doesn't hurt you on accident. They do it strategically. They study your kindness, then weaponize it. They see your loyalty and use it against you. They smile while tearing you down behind the scenes. But what they fail to realize is this. When you are a child of God, nothing you go through is ever wasted. God doesn't just protect you from the narcissist. He uses the very thing they did to you to push you into your purpose. It might sound strange at first, but there are some people who are allowed into your life not to bless you, but to break something in you that needed to be released. That betrayal wasn't meant to destroy you. It was meant to free you. That manipulation wasn't just pain, it was redirection. If they hadn't lied, you might have never looked deeper. If they hadn't left, you might have never discovered your voice. If they hadn't rejected you, you might have stayed in a place far beneath what God had planned for you. The very actions they thought would ruin you were actually being woven by God into the fabric of your testimony. The pain didn't feel purposeful. The heartbreak didn't look like destiny. The confusion didn't feel like preparation. But God doesn't operate like people. He sees the end from the beginning. He knows how to take ashes and turn them into beauty. He takes what the enemy meant for harm and transforms it into a platform for glory. The narcissist meant to silence you, but God was using the silence to strengthen your spirit. They meant to paralyze your progress, but God used the pause to shift your direction. You see, God doesn't waste seasons. Even the darkest chapters are still part of your story. That person may have walked away and thought they won. They may have smiled at your tears. They may have celebrated when you were at your lowest. But what they didn't know is that God was writing something in those tears that would later be your strength. He was planting something in that darkness that would bloom in the light. And when the time is right, you'll look back and realize you didn't just survive them. You were shaped by them. Not shaped into bitterness, but into purpose. Not shaped into revenge, but into revival. Not shaped into hate, but into healing. There's something God places inside of you through pain that comfort could never give. You discover your strength in the fire. You hear His voice more clearly in the storm. And through the pressure, through the betrayal, through the manipulation, God was not just protecting you. He was preparing you. Preparing you for something bigger than what you lost. Preparing you for something more solid than what was stolen. Preparing you for a season where no narcissist, no liar, no deceiver will ever have access to your heart again. And while the narcissist thought they were writing your ending, God was only writing a new beginning. What they tried to bury, God restores. What they meant to damage, God turns into development. Your pain became a platform. Your silence became your sanctuary. Your tears became your training ground. And now, you walk differently. You see differently. Not from pride, but from power. The kind of power that only comes from having gone through something and knowing God brought you out of it stronger than before. They may have underestimated who you were, but they couldn't stop who you're becoming. Their cruelty was real, but it wasn't fun. Their deception was painful, but it wasn't permanent. Because the moment you let God into your pain, started turning it into purpose. The moment you gave Him your brokenness, started building something unshakable. So yes, God gets revenge, but not in the way people expect. He doesn't always send fire from heaven. Sometimes His revenge is your transformation. His revenge is you rising in peace while they remain trapped in the same cycles they created. His revenge is you walking in purpose, free from bitterness, with a testimony that says, what they did to break me only built me. And as you step into that new season, remember this, you don't owe them anything. Not a reaction, not a response, not even revenge. Your healing is the closure. Your elevation is the answer. Your joy is the proof that God turned it all around. And as He uses what they did to you for something greater, you'll realize that no one can stop the plans of God. Not even the narcissist who tried to destroy you. There's something powerful that happens when God begins to shift the atmosphere in your favor. When you've been hurt by someone who thrives on attention and control, someone who manipulates situations to make themselves look good while making you feel small, there comes a moment where God steps in, not with a loud announcement, but with a quiet reversal. The voice that once dominated every room begins to lose its power, while the voice they tried to silence begins to rise. And you don't even have to force it. God does it for you. When the narcissist wounded you, it wasn't just with actions, it was with words. They spoke down to you, twisted conversations, used their voice as a weapon. They lied to others about you, exaggerated your flaws, and minimized your truth. Their voice was loud, persuasive, and charming, so much so that others may have believed them over you. But just because someone speaks with confidence doesn't mean they speak with truth. God sees the difference. And when He moves, He has a way of shutting down the loudest liars and lifting up the quiet truth-tellers. The narcissist thinks their influence is untouchable. They think their manipulation is invisible. But the same voice that once had the power to destroy reputations is the same voice that eventually falls silent, not by your doing, but by God's design. He knows how to make them lose the very thing they worship: control, influence, admiration. When God decides to deal with pride, He doesn't have to yell. He simply begins to close doors. People stop listening. Opportunities dry up. The charm no longer works. The spotlight dims. Not because anyone exposed them, but because the God who sees all things decided it was time for the truth to speak louder than deception. And while that happens, something remarkable is happening on your side. The voice they tried to erase is gaining strength. You may have been quiet for a season, not because you were weak, but because you were wise. You chose peace over pettiness. You chose healing over drama. You chose to stay silent while you watched God move. And because of that, He is giving you back your voice, not just for you, but so others can hear what truth sounds like after lies have had their run. You see, God doesn't just take away from the one who misused their voice. He gives it to the one who will honor Him with it. And your voice, your story, your truth is going to be heard in places the narcissist never imagined. The very words they tried to suppress will become the words that set others free. The very pain they tried to make you ashamed of will become your power. What they meant for silence, God turns into sound. What they meant for shame, God turns into strength. And the more they tried to cover your story, the more God reveals it. Not to embarrass anyone, but to bring healing to others who've been hurt the same way. The power of this reversal isn't just in what God takes away from them, it's in what He gives to you. He restores your confidence. He sharpens your discernment. He teaches you how to speak, not from a place of bitterness, but from a place of breakthrough. And now, you don't just speak with emotion, you speak with authority. Not because you were never wounded, but because you've been healed. Not because you were never attacked, but because you've overcome. That's what happens when God defends you. He doesn't just silence your enemy. He gives you a voice that echoes with truth, hope, and restoration. The narcissist may still be trying to maintain the image. They may still be talking like they've done nothing wrong. Because God will never allow a lie to reign forever. In His perfect time, truth always rises. And you don't have to force it. You don't have to shout to be heard. When God is behind your voice, it carries more weight than any microphone, more impact than any title, more power than any position. There will come a day, if it hasn't already, when people begin to see the truth for themselves. The same ones who were fooled by charm will begin to notice the patterns. The same ones who questioned your silence will now admire your strength. And you won't need to say, "I told you so." Your peace will say it for you. Your progress will say it for you. Your elevation will speak volume. God is making sure your voice is heard. Not in revenge, but in restoration. So stay steady. Stay grounded. You don't need to compete with someone who only speaks to control. Let God continue to refine your voice, restoring at the right time. Because when He does, no lie can compete with it. No manipulation can drown it. No narcissist can take credit for it. And your voice, once silenced, will rise like a trumpet. Not in noise, but in purpose, declaring that truth was never defeated. It was just waiting for its moment. There is a unique form of correction that God applies to those who intentionally harm others while pretending to be righteous. For the narcissist who hurt you, their greatest asset was never love, never loyalty. It was influence. They built their identity around being seen, admired, followed, and adored. They needed an audience. They craved validation. They fed off the praise of people, even if that praise came at your expense. But what happens when God decides it's time for correction is not always fire from the sky. It's disconnection. The very people they try to impress begin to drift. The relationships they counted on begin to dry up. The platform they cherished starts to crumble, and they find themselves in a place they never imagined. Isolation. This is one of the most quiet, yet effective ways God works. He doesn't always strike someone down in a dramatic moment. Often he lets them live long enough to watch everything they built with selfish ambition to collapse. The friendships they manipulated fade away. The charm that once opened doors now raises red. The people who used to believe them begin to see through them. Not because you exposed them, but because God revealed the truth in the hearts of those around them. That's what divine justice looks like. It's not just about exposing a lie. It's about revealing the truth in time and letting people decide who they want to trust. While the narcissist was busy trying to maintain an image, God was working behind the scenes, shifting hearts, shifting conversations, shifting alliances. The same people who once cheered them on no longer answer their calls. The same rooms they once dominated now feel cold and distant. And because their identity was built on being seen, this quiet rejection becomes their greatest discomfort. That's how God brings justice. He doesn't humiliate to destroy. He isolates to humble. And in that isolation, God gives them something they were never willing to face themselves. There's no one left to impress. No one left to manipulate. No one left to applaud. Just silence. Just stillness. Just reality. It's in that space where the performance stops and the real heart is revealed. Sometimes the most loving thing God can do is remove the crowd so the person can finally deal with the character. Hide. It's not about punishment. It's about accountability. You cannot hurt others and keep moving like nothing happened. Eventually, God pulls the plug on the illusion. And while they enter that space of isolation, you're entering a season of expansion. God is surrounding you with real support, healthy voices, and divine connection. The very relationships the narcissist tried to sabotage are now blossoming. The people who were confused about you now see clearly. Now see clearly. The lies that were spread are losing power, and your truth is rising. God is restoring what they tried to ruin, and He's doing it without your striving. He's showing you that you don't need to chase vindication when He has already scheduled your victory. What's powerful about this divine reversal is that you won't have to witness their isolation to know it's real. You'll simply sense the shift. You'll feel the release. You'll hear less about them and more about the peace you're walking in. God doesn't call you to gloat over their downfall. He calls you to grow from it. He calls you to move forward with grace, knowing that He handled what you couldn't, knowing that while they're losing fake connections, you're gaining real ones. While they're wondering where everyone went, you're stepping into rooms they never thought you'd enter. It's important to remember, this kind of revenge is not about getting even. It's about setting things right. God is not cruel. He's correct. And in His mercy, He removes the distractions from the narcissist's life so they finally have to confront the damage they've caused. Whether they admit it or not is not your responsibility. Whether they change or not is between them and God. But one thing is certain, God will not let their manipulation win. He will not allow their pride to prosper unchecked. He will not allow their influence to remain if it's being used to control and destroy others. And the best part, you didn't have to say a word, you didn't have to retaliate, you didn't have to run a campaign to convince people of the truth. God handled it in a way that protected your integrity and preserved your peace. He let the narcissist's own behavior testify against them. He let their own patterns expose them. And in the end, the people who once questioned you will respect you. The ones who were deceived will come to understand. And you'll be standing. Not bitter, not broken, but blessed. So don't worry about what they're doing now. Don't stalk their story. Don't check their updates. Don't wonder if they're still winning. Trust that if they're still walking in pride, they're already on their way to a quiet, divine interruption. And when it comes, it won't be to destroy them, but to stop them, to confront them, to bring them into the very isolation they feared. So God can do what only He can, change what they tried to control. There comes a point in every person's life where they're faced with the consequences of their choice. For someone with a narcissistic spirit, someone who has consistently manipulated, hurt, and used others to elevate themselves, that moment often arrives through something they never saw coming. Reflection. Not because they chose to self-evaluate, but because God, in His mercy and justice, leads them to a place where the noise is gone, the crowd has left, and the mirror of their actions is too clear to ignore, begins. And that is one of the most unexpected, yet powerful, ways God brings justice. Not through public humiliation, but through private conviction. When someone wounds you deeply and repeatedly with no remorse, it feels natural to want them to feel the pain they caused. But God's way of taking revenge is often very different from what we imagine. He doesn't just stop the narcissists to influence or expose their tactics. He takes them to a place where they are forced to sit with their own behavior. He begins removing the distractions, silencing the applause, and stripping away the false identity they built. Because before God restores a person, He reveals them to themselves. And that moment of personal reckoning can be more crushing than anything you could have ever said or done. In the beginning, they might deny it. They may blame everyone else, claim to be misunderstood, or even double down on their pride. But over time, the truth grows louder. The very relationships they destroyed no longer exist to validate them. The people they manipulated no longer defend them. The systems they used to protect their image no longer work. Oh, by little, the walls of self-deception begin to crack. God doesn't rush it. He lets it unfold at the pace that will reach their heart the deepest. And while it may seem like they're getting away with what they did, what's really happening is that God is softening their hardened heart for a divine interruption. You see, only God knows how to humble someone without destroying them. He knows how to bring them face to face with their own flaws without stripping them of the potential to change. That's the power of grace. It doesn't cancel justice, it partners with it. And for the narcissist who hurt you, the moment of reflection may be the very beginning of their redemption. Not so they can come back into your life and do it again, but so that they never repeat that cycle with anyone else. Because God isn't just trying to bring you peace, trying to break the pattern. He's trying to stop the cycle that caused you so much pain. It's not easy to accept that the one who hurt you may eventually. It doesn't feel fair. It doesn't feel fair. But remember this, God is a restorer, not just of people, but of justice, balance, and truth. He doesn't need your permission to work on someone's heart, but He does invite you to release the need for revenge, so He can work fully. And as you let go, something miraculous happens. You heal deeper. You grow stronger. You realize their transformation is not your responsibility, and their journey is not your burden. When God brings someone to that place of humility, it's not just for their sake, it's also for yours. So, you can move forward knowing that the one who hurt you is being dealt with. You couldn't see. Maybe they'll never apologize. Maybe they'll never make things right with you directly. But when God touches their heart, shame they tried to avoid becomes their teacher. The guilt they denied becomes their guide. And the pride they clung to begins to loosen its grip. That's not weakness. That's God doing what only He can, changing the heart of someone who never thought they needed to be changed. And if they ever do come to you one day, not with excuses, but with true repentance, you won't even need to hold a grudge. Because by then, God will have done such a deep work in you, their apology won't define your healing. You'll already be free. You'll already be whole. Their growth won't validate your worth. It will simply be a confirmation that God has been in control all along, that He handled what you couldn't, and He did it perfectly. So don't worry if it looks like they've moved on untouched. Don't lose heart. You'll never get the apology you deserve. Trust that God's justice includes transformation, that the same hands that lifted you are the hands now reaching toward them, not to reward their pride, but to break it. Not to endorse their behavior, but to correct it. And in that correction, may they find the very humility they once tried to avoid. Because that's what God does. He doesn't just confront the narcissist who hurt you. He changes them in ways that no one else could. Quietly, deeply, thoroughly. No justice was served. Not through vengeance, but through transformation. Not through destruction, but through redemption. You may have walked through a season that nearly broke you. A season filled with betrayal, confusion, manipulation, and deep emotional wounds inflicted by someone who only cared about their own gain. They used your love as a tool, your loyalty as leverage, and your silence as an opportunity. And for a moment it may have looked like they won. It felt like they walked away untouched while you were left shattered in the aftermath. But the truth is, God saw it all. Every conversation behind your back, every trap they set, every false story they told, every piece of your heart they tried to control. And He didn't ignore it. He simply waited for the perfect time to respond. What you must understand is that God's revenge doesn't always come with fire and thunder. It comes through divine reversal, through silent correction, and through powerful justice that no man can interrupt. He removes the illusion they built. He causes their traps to backfire. He turns their evil into your elevation. He silences their noise and amplifies your truth. He strips away their influence and surrounds you with real strength. And finally, He leads them to a place of humility. So you can watch them suffer, but so they can finally face what they refuse to see in themselves. You don't have to fight fire with fire. You don't have to prove your worth to the people who misunderstood you. You don't have to chase justice when God has already declared you victorious. Let Him fight your battles. When God defends you, He does it in a way that's complete. He lifts you with peace and allows them to fall into their own lessons. He doesn't just shut doors. They open new ones for you. He doesn't just expose what's false. He reveals what's real. You are not weak for walking away. You are not foolish for loving them. You are not naive for giving them grace. You are wise for letting go. You are powerful for rising above. And you are favored for trusting God with what you could never control. So stand tall, walk free, let your healing be your testimony, and your peace be your answer. Because the one who sits high has already settled the matter. And the final word over your life will not be betrayal. It will be beauty, it will be restoration, and it will be divine justice served by the hands of a faithful God. Your revenge is not in their ruin. Your revenge is in your rising.